Welcome everyone to this episode of All the Good Titles Were Taken. I'm going to start working on a better little tag in to the show. I think it's a little too generic, a little too boring. But as you can see, the show has started on time. It's because this is my solo show. If if I'm late, the only reason and the only person to blame is myself. But on this episode, we are going to cover Xennials, or as Tiny But Fierce likes to call them, the Oregon Trail generation. I kind of like that, but the term that's being used is Xennial. It is a mixture of both Gen X and Millennial, and we'll get into 2 videos of that. Then next after that, we're going to get into something I ran across that is highly disturbing, that I want to know how it's legal, how they're going to get away with it, and how it's not a violation of the Constitution for the government to force this on private companies, for one thing, and how it's not a violation of the Bill of Rights when it comes to anonymity that we're allowed through the Constitution, that we don't have to give all of this information to the government and give it through companies being forced by organizations. But we'll get into that. But starting off first, let's get into it. The first one we are going to start off with this evening. Let me pull myself off real quick. Let me pull me to the side here. This one is the psychology of Xennials. Now, this is we'll see what that actually is called. It's if you were born between 1976 and 1985. So let's get into the first video of the evening. But before we do, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and follow button. Depending on where you are watching from, I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Let's get into the video. Would help if I actually
remember both rotary phones and the first iPhone launch, and psychologists can't quite figure out where to put them. If you were born between 1976 and 1985, you're on the tail end of Gen X, but you're hardly a millennial, even though everyone keeps trying to shove you into one of those boxes. You're what researchers started calling a Xennial around 2014, and some sociologists have even labeled this group a microgeneration because
already these first couple ones are kind of short, but I'll get to the point. One I did watch, one I haven't fully watched yet, but this is a really good point, because I literally straddled 2 generations, and I've always felt this way, because we'll get into it. It's like, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that I feel more Gen X, even though by standards, being 81, my birth year, I don't feel like a millennial in any kind of way. I get things, but when it breaks down, you'll see a little bit more.
The window is so specific. What happened during that specific slice of history created something that's genuinely worth examining. So today, we're going to explore what makes them interesting from a psychological perspective. From the start, you spent your childhood in an analog world where boredom was just something you sat with.
When growing up, the whole don't come back, your parents would tell you to don't come back until the street lights come on. Dinner was served at that time. Summers, you'd go to the water hose out in front of the yard to get, that's how the water you would drink. I'm sure that probably wasn't healthy for us, but that's all we did.
You had to actually remember phone numbers, and not to mention the dread if you missed your favorite TV show, it was just gone. Yet
I want to push back there a little bit. We still had VCR technology. And I know some of us, if we had the ability, we at least set up the VCR if it's a show we like, that there was a possibility we might miss it. But the point's still true, because of not having DVRs or streaming or anything like that. It did make it harder for actually watching TV shows, because you didn't know what was coming on. I mean, well, you knew what was coming on, but you didn't know if you were going to get tied down with some activity. You'd slipped your mind, and then you end up missing your episode. The only way to end up seeing that episode again was during the summer months when they were doing repeats.
One day, right as you were moving into adulthood, the entire world went digital. Not gradually, suddenly. The timing of this shift had consequences that are still playing out. Most generations grow up entirely in one technology paradigm or other. Xennials, however, went through both of these life-defining experiences during the years when you were still discovering yourself. Your late teens looked very different to your 20s, and the disparity in age was far wider than most generations experience.
It's funny, this image, because it's kind of actually true. I mean, you look at my desk now, I have my phone set up almost exactly like that. Now, granted, I'm not using a laptop. I'm using actually a full desktop setup, but essentially like 2 monitor setup, where the younger one, it's like, yep, CDs, tapes, a little radio, yep, a poster up on the wall. That's literally it. That was like my desk growing up, until we actually got into the late 90s, and then it started kind of shifting. So yeah, it's yeah, this is kind of hitting quite a bit.
Consider the implications of this on your daily life. Remember how much of your teens were spent passing physical notes in class, or having conversations that disappeared into thin air, or making plans where you weren't able to text running late or where are you?
Yeah, that's very true. The whole point, you didn't know. You set up plans. We're going to meet at this location, go to the mall, or we're going to a water park, where we're going to meet up at the park or whatever to do whatever, maybe play some baseball, just relax, just hang out. Set a time, whether it be right before you're leaving school, you're meeting up with people. Hey, what are we doing and what time? And then you would just meet up. Granted, you did have a phone, to a landline, which is surprisingly starting to make a little bit of a resurgence. More and more people are getting landlines again and ditching cell phones. And it's the younger generation, I think, is really starting to do a technological pushback, which, again, I'm not against technology, but I think technology is actually hurting society, not helping society. There are things it's good for, but overall, I think we're becoming dumber and lazier, and have no ability to have delayed gratification. Everything needs to be instant gratification. We see that all the time when it comes to streaming, to Amazon packages. You order next day, and let's say they screw up shipping. How many people have freaked out because their package said it was going to deliver today and it didn't show up, and then start freaking out about it? I mean, the closest to delayed gratification you had was going out to the mall, going out to a grocery store and getting that item. But that still meant actually physically having to go out, spend time to do it, go out and get it. So
You just showed up and hoped your friends would be there. That required a completely different kind of trust and commitment than what exists now. But then you were in your 20s and saw everyone get cell phones. You registered with Friendster, next MySpace, then Facebook.
I never did this. I never was on Friendster. I never did MySpace, and I've not done Facebook. I think this is what also kind of feeds a little bit more into the Gen X side of things, is that I'm not really that big on social media. I do use X, and that's it. And then I'm here on Kick, Rumble, and YouTube to put out content that I make. But by and large, I mean, I'm kind of using Discord a little bit, but not even that much. And even what Discord's starting to kind of put age verification. Granted, the age verification, all this stuff, for one thing, I get it. You want to protect the children, but the thing is that at what expense?
Prior to social media, most people only had 3 different ways to contact someone, either their home or work phone, or just by showing up at their house. Then suddenly you have 17 different messaging apps, and you simply figured it out. During your formative years, you experienced both worlds. According to research on brain development, the prefrontal cortex, the region that mediates our ability to adapt to new situations and learn complex skills, is still maturing until roughly the age of 25. A study published in Nature Neuroscience found that this region matures well into the 20s. This means that Xennials were still in this high plasticity window when the technological landscape went through a complete overhaul. You were young enough that picking up new technology felt natural, but old enough to remember what came just before it. Due to being adults when technology first appeared, Gen Xers can sometimes be a bit skeptical of technology. Millennials, particularly the younger ones, have no real memory of life without the internet. If you're a Xennial, though, you've experienced both things, which has created a kind of bilingualism that is pretty rare. You can have a face-to-face conversation without checking your phone every 30 seconds.
This is true, but from what I've seen a lot of Gen Xers that have that problem with the phone, but I definitely think it's the younger generation, younger millennials and Gen Z that can't live without their phone. Darnell Quigley does his lights camera citation, and I watched a lot of these cop videos and stuff, and it's like all these younger adults that are being arrested are all obsessed with about their phone. What can I have my phone? Can I get my phone? When can I have my phone? My phone. It's like, but how many? Yeah, it's very true. And this is why we're having such a problem when it comes to distracted driving when phones, because people can't, the phone has become too much of a distraction just in life in general that they can't set it down for 30 minutes, for an hour. There are times when I don't even check my phone. I'll set it down and I won't even check it for the entire evening, which is bad when I'm trying to communicate with a couple friends. I mean, granted, and that's true,
But you also don't get anxious about learning new software. You remember what it felt like to be genuinely unreachable for hours at a time, which is an experience a lot of younger people simply don't have.
and I will do that on the weekends. And I'm trying more and more myself to unplug, spend more time away from technology. In the near future, I'm looking to take some weekends off, to completely unplug, disconnect, not check anything, and get back to not necessarily nature, but in more of the analog world. I mean, recently I started actually building a hi-fi system again. I personally have never actually owned an actual hi-fi system. Back growing up, had a boombox that had detachable speakers, and it was designed to look like components stacked on top of each other. Didn't even have a CD player. I actually had to buy a portable CD player and then connect it in. And so that's how old it was. It didn't even have a CD player at the time. But now I'm actually building a hi-fi system, and actually my algorithm right now on YouTube is a lot of hi-fi stuff, because I've been watching and eating that stuff up right now, because again, I grew up with music. Music was the entertainment. That is what I enjoyed. And so now in my advancing years and getting older, having a little bit of a disposable cash, I'm picking up things. I found a very good, not budget, but a good priced 6 CD changer. And so I'm listening to CDs again, because even CDs are starting to make a resurgence, but I never got rid of my CDs. I still have them all, just wasn't still using them. I had turned them all into FLAC files, so lossless, and I was just running up my music through Plex. But now it's like, no, I want to get that even more. On top of the receiver, I have my turntable. And so I'm listening to records again and things like that. And I've never really owned it. My parents, granted, had them. I remember using records when I was growing up, but I never personally owned records.
But you're also not intimidated by technology the way some older generations are. And this shows up in ways you might not even notice, like you probably have a different relationship with privacy than other generations. You grew up in a world where your embarrassing moments just faded into memory instead of living forever on social media.
And that's the danger for this younger generation, is because they've lived their entire lives on the internet. All of their embarrassing, all of their stuff is cataloged and saved on the internet. And that's what's going to make it harder for them to get employment later in life, because they you sit there and find it all, because they don't know not to do this stuff, because they're still developing. The stupid things we did as kids, I mean, it's just as stupid as the younger generation, but it wasn't being digitally recorded and preserved. So yeah, jumping off high roofs, climbing trees and falling out of them. All these things that we did that were stupid, lighting off fireworks and stuff like that where we're not supposed to. I mean, growing up, I mean, it was No one had that stuff recorded. The language we use, no one really remembers it because you know what? It's not recorded, preserved for all life. Unlike the younger generation, that's all their lives are. They're completely digitally cataloged and archived.
That seventh grade haircut, that breakup, that drunk night at a party, there's no photo evidence. It just exists in the stories people tell. This creates a fundamentally different relationship with your past. Your memories could evolve, could become stories, could change shape over time the way human memory naturally works. You weren't trapped by documentation. Research on autobiographical memory suggests that the way we store and recall personal experiences is actually quite fluid. Our brains are designed to edit memories, keep what matters, and let the rest fade. When everything is permanently documented and searchable, that natural process gets complicated in ways we're still trying to understand. But here's where things get messy. You also entered the job market right around the 2008 financial crisis, which means a lot of you experienced significant economic instability.
That's where I disagree a little bit because I think with the older millennials, Xennials, a lot of us were already doing summer jobs, or working during high school. So we weren't coming in to the job market in 2008. Oh, how you doing, Mr. Beak? Welcome. So, I mean, I got the waiver signed and so that I could work in a supermarket 14. Limited hours at 14, but we could start working. And I've been essentially working since I was 14. So that's entering the job market well before 2008.
During the exact years when you were supposed to be establishing your careers. That timing matters more than people realize. Research on economic hardship shows that financial trauma during this life stage can have lasting psychological effects. People who experience job loss or financial instability during this life stage often carry those experiences forward, even.
See, this is where I'm going to push back a little bit on the video because if they're talking about Xennials, that's 76 to 85. By 2008, you should have already been in the job market well before the crash. 2008, that you're already looking at being 24. If you were born in 1985, let's do the math on that one real quick. Forgive me, I'm still a little clouded right now because I'm coming out of this cold that I've been having and everything else. And so let's say in 2008, when the crash actually did occur, and you take it at the end of what is being deemed the Xennial, you were already 23. Most of us, were already in the job market well before 23. Like I said, I started working at 14. So I've already started being in the job market well before 2008. I could see this as being the kind of middle millennials that were having the problem with the financial market. Doing Lieutenant Garatina, how you doing this evening? So what they're deeming as millennial would have already been in the job market. Now, granted, some of the jobs you might have been in may have been downsized during that period, which then would add financial hardship. But trying to get into the job market at that time, you're just now entering, and that's 1985. You're 23 in 2008. So it's like you're well behind the ball if you're just entering the workplace entering the job market at that time. Now, granted, I mean, you get out of college at 22, roughly 22 if you went right into college. So you should have already been in. But the only thing I can say that maybe would apply is the fact that maybe your job got downsized during that period.
After their situations improve, it shapes how you think about money, security, and risk in ways that don't easily go away. So you've got this generation that learned to adapt to massive technological change, but also got economically burned right when you were trying to build stability. You can navigate change because you had to, but you might also have this underlying current of what if it all falls apart again running through your decision making. And nobody really talks about this combination. The cultural conversation about generations tends to pit Gen X against millennials, as if everyone born after 1965 and before 2000 is basically the same. But the specific years you were born in, especially during periods of rapid change, create distinct experiences that don't fit into those broad categories.
I don't know if that's just me, but I'm a planner. Whether it be my growing up with ADD and having this ability to kind of look at it, because while I can set plans and I can look ahead and I can pre-plan to the future, I do have the ability, like a lot of people, of being a little bit of a procrastinator. Why do today what you can put off till tomorrow, right? But with that said, planning for it to all fall apart, I do that all the time. I have for the longest time. I always look at not necessarily an exit opportunity or an exit strategy, but I do keep in mind if things were to go in a negative direction, whether it be for a job, whether it be financial hit because something expensive that I have to do. So I'm looking even at financing and finances and trying to plan the best. If something were to come up, am I secure enough?
Xennials deal with a paradox that's honestly pretty unusual. You have the self-reliance and skepticism of Gen X because you grew up before helicopter parenting became standard.
We were right in the generation where they were still really starting to push, for those that remember it, self-esteem. If you remember growing up, it's the 1975, 76 to 2005 is when they were really trying to push a child's self-esteem. Don't do this negative towards them because it'll hurt their self-esteem. And it was just a precursor to what they ended up doing with participation trophies. We didn't get participation trophies, but they were coming. I mean, those who remember having field day back in elementary school, they had first, second, and third place. Not everyone got a ribbon. It was awarded by who won. And so meritocracy existed. What that made people do is, you want to know what? If I want one of those ribbons, I need to try harder. If I want to get one of those ribbons, then I need to be the best at that. And that is really what participation trophies really kind of took away, is there's no drive anymore. But I think participation trophies are where the entryway into communism. Everyone is equal. Everyone gets the same results. Because how is that not communism? Everyone just does this activity. Doesn't matter how well you perform, but everyone gets a medal. Everyone gets a trophy. That literally is equal outcomes. It's communism. It's socialism. It's evil. It's just flat out evil.
Parents probably didn't know where you were for hours at a time, and that was just normal. You learned to solve problems on your own, to entertain yourself, to deal with boredom and frustration without immediate adult intervention. However, you also reached adulthood during the early days of the internet, when technology was still thought to connect everyone and solve everything, before we all realized that it might be actually making some things more complicated. It is odd to find yourself there, independent and cooperative, doubtful yet optimistic, digital but analog. What seems to define Xennials is this ability to hold contradictions without it feeling weird. You remember the before and the after, which means you're able to see what was gained and what was lost.
What was gained and what was lost is a really good point, because I think actually overall with the increase in technology, I think we're actually losing more than what we've gained. And I think we see this so much. I brought this up earlier. It's the whole point that people, their attention spans, and they're now getting TikTok brain. They can't sit there and watch long form things anymore. Music has been dumbed down. Okay, so this is the best example I can bring up. Music. Music used to be combined of an A part, a B part, an A part, and it went A, B, and C. We'll use the very simple breakdown of how a song is laid out, rock and roll, whatever it may be. And so it would go A, then B, then A, then B, and then C, a bridge, or where you would have maybe no lyrics. Maybe there would be some. You'd have a solo, an instrumental solo in there, and then it'd go back to B and then A, or A then B, and the song ends. If you look at modern music right now, the bridge is gone. It's just A, B, A, B, A, B, song's over. On top of that, there's no lead into it. How many songs had these long intros before there's even lyrics? They stopped doing that because the attention span of the younger generations has gone so small, so short. You can't have a long instrumental. You got to get to the lyrics because because this lack of attention span is having this younger generation then turn it off, switch to the next song because they're on Spotify. They're not listening to a physical media. It's the attention spans. Another thing I think that we've lost is, again, what we gained, which is actually not a positive, it's a negative, is constant need for instant gratification. I talked about this earlier. It's everyone expects things to just come so quickly because there's no attention span either. People getting freaked out because they order something off of Amazon and expect it the next day, but then it doesn't come. They start freaking out about it. Where, again, like I said, you actually had to go to the store and physically get it yourself, or you actually had to wait to get it. Wait till the weekend. Your friend got a new CD, but you want to go and get it, but you can't go until the weekend, so you have to wait.
Perhaps you're not as nostalgic for the past in the same way Gen X might be, since you genuinely appreciate modern conveniences too. However, unlike many of the younger generations, you still recognize what we gave up. You lost the ability to be truly alone with your thoughts without effort. You lost the patience that comes from waiting. You lost a certain kind of presence that existed when there wasn't always something else competing for your attention.
For me, that's a little bit different, I find. I have no problem with being solo at times. I have no problem with being alone and bored. I don't have a problem. I can flip on a video. I can put in a CD to listen to. I can put a record on and just sit there and enjoy it. I don't need to have, I think the problem is everyone is just so constantly bombarded with stimuli. To just go and not have all the stimuli doesn't feel right to them. Where, I mean, I have no problem with getting off work and just being alone for a couple hours, not having my phone going off or having to go and meet other people and meet up and do stuff. I'm fine with just kicking back and unplugging, if you will.
But you gained connection, information, and possibilities your younger self couldn't have imagined. If you're a Xennial, you probably feel like you don't quite fit in anywhere. Too young for some things and too old for others, caught between two worlds. It's not a fault, that's actually the defining feature of your generation's experience. In a world that keeps changing faster than anyone can predict, having lived through one massive transition might be one of the most valuable things you could have learned. You've adapted to a transitional lifestyle. The environment in which you were raised doesn't necessarily have to be the one in which you live forever. The Xennial experience is worth knowing about because of that, more than anything. Not because you're special in some superior way, but because you lived through a specific moment in history that taught you something the rest of us are still trying to figure out: how to adapt without losing yourself in the process. If this resonated with you, I'd really appreciate you subscribing. And if you want to help me keep making content like this, consider becoming a channel member. Your support...
So like I said, this video actually comes from, let me pull it back a little bit. And so this video comes from Psychology Simplified. The link is in the description to this channel, and a link to the video is also in the show description. So again, I can see where they're coming from when it talking about that divide. but I think it's because I'm so dead center closer to Gen X, and having boomer generation parents, I feel more to the older side of things than I do to the millennial side of things. And I don't know if that's true for those that grew up in that same time frame, but I just it's something. I mean, because yeah, I so far with this with that video specifically, I think it does speak to the fact that a lot of, I mean, and every generation feels this way, but specifically, we don't feel like we fit into this generation. And I think a micro generation, I think, does kind of fit it better because, yeah, we had a technological explosion when it came to personal accessibility to this technology, internet. Specifically, what they're kind of pointing out is where the massive change really occurred was in 1995. They see it in the music. They see it in the technology because essentially at what happened in 95, Windows 95 and the explosion of the internet with American Online. That's where it became more normal for families to have a family computer and being going online. And that happened in 1995. So the next one we're going to watch is somewhat similar. This one is coming from, well, it would help to actually share the right one. So this one is coming from the psychosist. Oh, wow, I am having problems. So psychology of a Xennial, why you feel older than you are. So we will expand this out and get into this one. And then afterward, like I said, the next thing we're going to do is talk about more government interference in the free market system. Because that's really what it looks like. Really bad at that. I got to make sure that the audio is always on.
You remember when people just disappeared? Not dramatically, not permanently. They moved, changed schools, got a different job, and unless you had their home phone number written in a notebook somewhere, that was it. They became a memory you carried alone.
I remember my phone numbers from growing up. Now, do I remember my friends' phone numbers from when I was growing up? No, but it's very true. You had to memorize phone numbers. Or you had a little notebook that had phone numbers written in it, but how many people carried that around? You had your important ones that you always remembered. And like I said, growing up, I remember my phone number from growing up, still to this day.
If you were born between 1976 and 1985, you belong to what researchers call a micro-generation. Not quite Gen X. Definitely not millennial. You're a Xennial. And there's a specific kind of exhaustion you carry that nobody else quite understands. It's not physical fatigue. It's chronological exhaustion. You feel older than you are because you've lived 2 full lifetimes in the span of 40 years. You are a biological bridge between 2 completely different eras of human consciousness. And the friction between those 2 worlds is wearing you down in ways you might not even have words for yet. Here's
Hail, Emily, how are you doing this evening?
what makes you different. You still feel a subconscious hit of dopamine when a physical phone rings, but you...
I disagree a little bit. There might be that hit of dopamine from the phone call, but nowadays not many people are actually calling. So the phone rings, it's usually spam. Which I thought they were going to kind of clamp down a little bit on spam calls, but nah, it's still all these spam calls.
You almost never answer it. You know exactly how to navigate a paper map, but you're completely paralyzed if your GPS loses signal for 10.
Okay, that's ridiculous. No. Yes, I can use a paper map, and I used paper maps for the longest time and wouldn't mind going back to it, but my GPS loses signal. I'm not, for 10 seconds, I'm not freaking out about it.
Seconds. You show up 5 minutes early to every meeting because you grew up in a world where on time meant you were already late, and there was no way to text running behind to a landline.
You probably carry a physical notebook or pen, not because you're rejecting technology, but because your brain trusts the tactile feedback of ink more than the ethereal nature of a cloud-based app.
Yeah, I honestly do that. Not necessarily carry a notebook around, but even at work, I'd rather work off of paper than work off of a spreadsheet. So or a document. If I'm comparing pricing and stuff like that, I will print the information out and set it in front of me on the desk and actually sit there and write my notes physically on it. It's so much easier. It's paperless. It's saving the planet and just to type it into the computer. But it's like, nah, I'd rather make my handwritten notes on this stuff. I never really thought about it in the aspect of it being something that is like generation specific. But yeah, that and how many of the younger generation can even write.
Meticulously organize your digital files into folders because you
Oh, I'm guilty of this. I have so many on my computer for work. I have so many different files. And inside those files, I have files, folders, and it's all broken down. Yeah. It's easier to access the information if it's all neatly categorized and put into proper folders. It makes it easier to find this stuff. There's nothing wrong with that.
remember when finding something meant physically looking through a drawer. You still buy physical copies of books you love because, deep down, you don't entirely trust that the internet will be here forever.
No, that's not true. For me, anyway, and I don't know for you guys if that is the case. What I see it as is the fact that I know it's not that the internet's going away. They are definitely clamping down on things. The next video we'll be watching will be an indicator of the direction that governments are trying to push us towards. But to own the physical media, which I'm a big advocate of, you own it and it can't be taken away from you unless they come busting down your door and actually taking it from you. If you have a digital copy, you don't own it. You only have a license to it. If you, let's say, we'll use books as the example, but it's true for streaming services when it comes to movies that you have bought digital or music that you bought digitally, you don't own that music. You only own a license to listen to it. Now, if that company loses their ability through licensing to have it in their service, it will be removed. Sony PlayStation users, learned this the hard way because Sony lost a bunch of their streaming. So people that had bought movies suddenly checked their libraries that they had bought and the media was gone. Then they tried to push back on it and say, hey, I bought this. Why is it gone? And that's when they found out is that you did not actually buy a copy of it. You bought a license. And the license clearly states that you could at any time lose this media. Now, if it's something that is actually owned by the streaming service, and this is why I think we have a streaming service bubble that is forming. If the material that is on that platform they deem is theirs, and they're not going to take it down because people are watching it. But if they deem an episode, we talk about Community and their first D&D episode, Chang goes and goes as a dark elf and completely goes into character, but they put it as calling it blackface. It's not blackface, but they ended up pulling that episode completely from the streaming service because it's offensive. If you had the physical media, which I do, of Community, I never lost that episode. It's the same with Mad Men. Mad Men had an episode where one of the characters does blackface, and true 1960s, 1950s blackface. Now, granted, this is a TV show that is focused on a certain time frame when that is in there. They pulled that episode. They eventually did put it back, but then put a disclaimer prior to. But having the physical media, I never lost that episode, and I don't have this stupid disclaimer prior to watching the episode. Books are the same way. They deem that book to be problematic, then they can remove it from their library. Well, it's downloaded to your, how are they going to take it from my e-reader? Well, when you go to buy another book from this company, they search your library. Your book will then get pulled because, again, you only have a license to it. You don't own it. And a lot of people just don't understand that. That's why I'm such a big advocate from the aspect of digital media. That's, like I said, I'm building a hi-fi system so I can listen to records in good sound and bringing back CDs and stuff. I'm big on physical media when it comes to DVDs and Blu-rays, not to the point of Arza that's doing VHS. No, sorry. We don't need to bring back cassette tapes. We don't need to bring back VHS. Those are too easily to damage, degrade. I mean, yeah, there is some kind of nostalgia for a 3x4 video format on a CRT. I can understand that. I grew up with it. But it's not like I want to go that far back. But I still want to own my own media. They can't just randomly take an episode away because they now deem it problematic.
Rehearse grocery store interactions in your head, not from social anxiety, but from a residual habit of efficiency from when human interaction was a primary unedited event. You look at a sunset and feel a split-second urge to photograph it, followed immediately by a wave of exhaustion at the thought of sharing it. You are caught in what psychologists are beginning to call the analog-digital cusp, and it's not just about nostalgia. It's about maintaining two completely separate operating systems in one brain. What's happening inside you is a form of dual environment cognitive load. Research on brain development shows that the environment we occupy during our developmental window, roughly ages 12 to 22, permanently wires our expectations of the world. For you, that window was split down the middle. You had pre-digital socialization during your formative years, then digital saturation hit during early adulthood. This created something specific. A high internal locus of control grafted onto a foundation of uncertainty tolerance. Let me explain. During your pre-digital years, you learned that if you wanted to know something, you went to a library.
I brought this up before. This is where I think one of the downsides of the technological boom that we went through, everyone has access to the wealth of information and knowledge of humanity in our pockets through our smartphones. And I think society's getting dumber. People can't write anymore. They can't read cursive because they stopped teaching in schools. You listen to a lot of people, they are ignorant of actually how things work. You go and we see the man on the street interviews where people are asked, like, how many branches of government are there and what are the branches of government? And no one can answer it. Now, granted, those videos, they do splice and they take the ones that obviously for viewership to take the ones that can't answer the question. There are still some that are out there that can answer it. But the ones that are sitting there on the college campuses that can't answer it, it's like this is not a good sign. Even though we had to go to the library to do research, we had to actually read things to get the information. Nowadays, because we have search and everything else, and we're already learning that chat GBT and Copilot, they call it hallucinate and make up crap. They don't actually give you the information, don't research it, they just make it up. That's your AI. But even with that, the search, when people are using search on their phones for all of this for the technology and stuff like that and trying to find the information, how many are scrolling to find a few sources to check and see if the first one is even right? No, they're going to that first one, just reading the title of it and just taking it as that's the correct information. Again, I think people are getting dumber.
You wanted to see someone, you had to be where you said you'd be. You were the primary agent of your own information foraging. Your outcomes depended entirely on your actions, your memory, your follow-through. Then the digital shift occurred. Suddenly, information was instant but unreliable. Connections were constant but shallow. Your brain had to overlay an entirely new system onto the old one. And
the times we stream with the younger guys, Arza Chats, Full Metal Nate, Vaughn, we kind of see that when it comes to the fact that they talk about if they're trying to date and all this stuff, that they can't even do human interaction. They can't get out there and actually interact with people, and it's not their faults. I don't blame them in any kind of way. It's the technology world that we're living in. It's what they grew up with, that the only kind of personal relationships they have are all mostly digital. They don't have the real world, so they never built those skills. Not to mention some of them grew up still in school when COVID hit. That completely screwed up an entire generation when it comes to interacting with people in the formative years.
It created permanent cognitive dissonance. You want the stability of the analog world, but you're forced to compete in the volatility of the digital one. Attachment theory plays a role here too. Many Xennials developed what researchers might call an avoidant secure hybrid. You're secure in your ability to survive offline. You know how to fix things, how to be bored, how to wait, but you're avoidant of the hypersurveillance of the modern social web. You feel older because you...
It's good that this is bringing it up because this kind of leads into the next video, talking about the hypersurveillance. I mean, how many people got rid of their Ring doorbell? If you had a Ring doorbell, I mean, did you get rid of it after you found out that essentially it's going to be turned into a surveillance state? Just sign up for this. Yeah, but if you're that easily going to use it, we are now hearing of cops just going to like Ring and demanding all of the Ring doorbell for an area, and Ring is just turning it over. I mean, we're moving, the US is moving more and more into a surveillance state, and it's getting worse. Now they're flat out advertising it, trying to say, hey, look, this is a good thing.
Remember what it was like to be anonymous. But here's where it gets complicated. The reason you feel like you've aged a century since 2005 isn't just about technology changing. It's about a fundamental shift in the nature of utility itself. In the late 90s and early 2000s, technology was a tool you used to enhance your life. You sat at a computer. You finished a task. You walked away. Today, you're not using the technology. The technology is using you. You are the data. You are the content. You are...
Yep. And that's why there's so many free-to-play games out there. It's because you're getting to play it for free because you're the product. You're what's being sold. It goes back into the fact that companies aren't making products mainly for the people. It's making it so that they can turn around and take your information and sell it to other people as data brokers. The reason why I'm gotten rid of Windows completely is because of all the telemetry and everything else that Windows 11, which is nothing more than spy and malware, is sitting there constantly collecting about everything you're doing on the computer, which again, this leads into the next video, that people need to be aware of what's happening in state governments right now.
The engagement metric that feeds the algorithm. And as a Xennial, you're acutely aware of this shift because you remember the before time, when the computer was a destination, not a constant companion. Younger generations don't feel the weight of this because they have no baseline for silence. They don't know what they're missing. Older generations often dismiss the digital world as something they can simply opt out of. But you can't opt out. You are what some sociologists are starting to call the bridge generation. You build the systems, you manage the teams, you raise the children, you troubleshoot your family's Wi-Fi, and then spend the weekend in the woods without a phone. But you never feel fully settled in either place. You are the cultural translator between two groups of people who speak entirely different languages of intent. And translation is exhausting work. This is the core contradiction of the Xennial identity. You are self-sufficient but secretly craving relief. You are digitally fluent but nostalgically exhausted. You are independent because you had to be, yet you're worn down by the constant demand for your attention. You're skeptical of the new, yet you're the first person everyone calls when something breaks. You're a guardian of the analog past, even as you pioneer the digital future. Both sides.
Which kind of goes into the whole point that I was talking about earlier when it comes to physical media. I am big on the physical media and stuff like that, and I've had the CDs. All of my CDs, I mean, this CD collection started back, 2002, 2003 area, when I started actually getting CDs and collecting CDs. I still have all of them. I never got rid of them. And I took them and FLAC filed them so that I can then listen to them digitally. So essentially, it is doing this. I am embracing the technology, but I'm creating my own because I don't want to pay for service. I don't want to pay for Spotify and stuff like that. I want to listen to my own music, and I've already paid for it. I don't want to pay for it again. Why do I want to listen to something that I already have and then pay a subscription fee for? That's the one thing that I always recommend to people. It's like, if you have the ability and you do have the funds to be able to do it, and it isn't even that much funds that you need to do it, because you can buy a couple external hard drives and connect them to your computer and set up your own media system, a digital media system for your own house with a couple external hard drives, and then using like Jellyfin or Plex to create the library itself. And then you can access it from your phone, smart TVs, gaming consoles, or like a Roku stick. I mean, you can then access it from those devices if you're on the network. In the case of Plex, you pay just a small one-time fee. And if I'm traveling or doing anything, I can access my entire library on the road from my network and watch my own videos from my network, my own music from mine, and I'm not paying a monthly fee. I paid a one-time fee to be able to do that.
Are logical adaptations. Your self-reliance came from a childhood where your parents didn't know where you were for hours at a time, and that was normal. You learned to solve problems alone, to entertain yourself, to deal with boredom without immediate intervention. But your digital fluency came from entering adulthood right when the internet promised to connect everyone and solve everything. Before we all realized it might be making some things more complicated. You can hold both, but holding both has a cost. There's a quiet loss at the center of the Xennial experience, the safety of forgetting. You grew up in the last era where mistakes were undocumented. Your teenage embarrassments, your early heartbreaks, your awkward transitions, they're safely tucked away in shoeboxes under beds, not indexed in a searchable database. But now, you live in a world where everything is permanent. This creates a hypervigilance that ages the soul. You're constantly monitoring your digital footprint while mourning the time when a footprint was just something left in dirt. You're mourning the patience that boredom used to build, those long, slow afternoons that forced you to think, to imagine, to simply exist without a feedback loop.
Kind of goes into the whole point that a lot of people seem to be doing lately. And I think it's a positive, is that people are kind of getting back to creative works. The younger generation, the alpha generations are really starting to embrace it and push back against the older generations when it comes to the technology. They're the ones that are going back out into the woods and hiking. They're the ones that are picking up analog hobbies like knitting or cross stitching or woodworking. It's the reversion. Of course, we see this with other generations always kind of fight back against what the previous generation held up. But it's good to see that more analog activities, less technological activities are starting to make a rebound. Painting. Now, what I'm seeing out of my generation, the ones that they're being talked about here, is I'm finding that a lot of people that I know are starting to play with the idea of writing books and are writing stories and starting to do these things and being creative again and disconnecting from the digital and just thinking about and creating works of art, whether they get published or not, but being creative again. And I think that's what technology overall is taking away from us, is that not all of us are creative in certain ways. Some things are good, some things are not. But people that have a proclivity to be able to write a good story, those that can draw, these are like, if we kept going in the direction we're going, I almost feel like this was going to be art forms that were going to be lost, because now it's just AI generated slop music, AI generated photos, images and stuff like that. There's nothing that is actually being made by the individuals. Am I against AI? Not fully. I can see it being used as a tool, but what they're trying to push towards when it comes to AI technology is they're looking to make it become our masters. They really are. Even though they're not saying it, the AI, they keep moving towards where they're going to be our overlords. I really do kind of fall under the trope of old sci-fi that AI is just going to lead to human destruction. I kind of think that if we let it keep going in the direction it's going, it will be the destruction of humanity. Now, if we have it as just simple tools, if we use Star Trek as an example, yeah, the AI systems don't control the life of the crew, the Enterprise. It's a tool that is available. It is voice activated to get this information and stuff, and it's a tool, but it's not running their lives. But then you look at the other side of sci-fi when it comes to the Terminator, the Matrix. There's other ones I'm blanking on. But those, and even Battlestar Galactica, the reboot specifically, where AI created by man ends up taking over and then ruling man. And then on top of it is that it ends up getting out of our control completely, that we can't even shut it off. We've said examples already that researchers have taken AIs, had them talk to each other, two AI models talking back and forth between each other. And within less than a minute, they started making up their own language that the researchers had to pull the plug on it because they no longer knew what they were talking about and couldn't understand what was being said. Another example is the AI writing its own code to be prevented from being shut off. Another example is that they opened it up and stuff like that, that the AI started threatening to release private information as blackmail. AI is even trying to then blackmail people. And yet we're continuing with this. AI as a tool is fine. AI that they're going for and keep pushing for is not going to be good for man.
You feel old because you're grieving a version of humanity that allowed for growth without a witness. And you're doing it in real time, while everyone around you moves forward without noticing what was left behind. But here's what you need to understand. That chronological exhaustion isn't dysfunction. It's evidence of immense skill. You are essentially operating as a biological index of what it means to be human in both worlds. You understand the value of a deep, focused hour of work. You know that stability isn't something you find online. It's something you build in the physical world. You can navigate digital complexity while maintaining analog values. In a world that keeps changing faster than anyone expected, being the bridge is heavy work, but it's also vital work. You're not just an old millennial or a young Gen Xer. You are the keepers of a transition that will never happen again in human history. You carry dual environment cognition that allows you to see what was gained and what was lost. And that perspective is increasingly rare. Bridges bear weight. That's what they're built for. The feeling of being older isn't premature aging. It's pattern recognition across discontinuous systems. It's the psychological signature of someone who lived through a phase transition and retained both states. You're not falling behind. You've just traveled further than most people realize. If this finally put words to that strange, quiet fatigue you carry, subscribe. I make content like this, diving into the hidden psychology of how...
So like I said, this video comes from... Pull this information out real quick here. This one comes from, you can see it on the screen. This video is linked and the channel is linked in the show description. So if you found this one interesting, go ahead and check them out as well. Okay, the next one. Oh, this one is really, I think, adding more and more to the surveillance state. So this comes from the London Duke Journal. The description, the show, channel, and this video specifically are linked in the description. But as you can see, you can see that California law to require Linux Windows to implement age verification by January 1st, 2027. A new California law, AB 1043, signed by Gavin Newsom, requires all operating systems from Mac OS to BSD, to implement age verification at the system level. In other words, if you buy a new operating system, you got to do age verification. You want to switch from Windows to Linux, you got to do an age verification for your operating system on your own damn computer. What the hell? This is where I think government's way out of control, and I don't know how this can be even constitutionally legal. I'm really hoping that some damages come, so this actually has to go in front of the Supreme Court. This is something, because the thing is that this isn't just happening in California. This is on the heels of what Colorado did a couple days ago. Colorado's done the same damn thing. So both Colorado and California are doing the same thing. So let's watch this video and find out about this, because this is disgusting. This is more surveillance state bullshit that's being pushed on us.
Talked about a new proposed bill in the state of Colorado, which would require all operating system vendors to implement mandatory age verification at the system level. So when you install an operating system or set up a new user account, you would have to declare what your age is with an ambiguous, unknown level of verification attached to that. And this would apply to every operating system from desktop to mobile. So not just iOS and Android, but Windows and Mac OS, Linux. I mean, from Ubuntu to Fedora, FreeBSD, FreeDOS, Haiku, NetBSD. Every operating system vendor that wishes to do business in the state of Colorado would have to apply to this, would have to adhere to this. And if they failed to do so, there was a fine of $7,500 per incident. And each incident was every person that didn't get the age verification prompt. So the more popular an operating system is, the higher the potential fine is. And when we were talking the fines at the level that would absolutely put Canonical, Red Hat, IBM, etc., completely out of business. Now, when I was reporting on this, many people began speaking up and saying, hey, there's this can't possibly pass. It's too absolutely absurd. No one's going to go for this.
Government is. Granted, if you look at the one that's up in the corner, that was from his thing about the Colorado state bill. That was only from him doing these recordings. That was only 2 days before this one. And of course, it's Democrats Democrats are pushing it, but he's going to indicate that Republicans are doing the same damn thing. Again, right, doesn't matter right or left. It's the same damn bird when it comes to a lot of these politicians. Let's grow the deep state. Let's grow big government. Let's grow Big Brother.
And here's something I wanted to point out to everyone. This is already law in the state of California. This passed back in October. It was known as California Assembly Bill number 1043, Age Verification Signals, Software Applications, and Online Services. It's a pretty catchy title. Well, that age verification law passed the state of California with absolutely everybody voting.
If you read down in there, it says existing law generally provides protection for minors on the internet, including the California Age Appropriate Design Code Act that, among other things, requires a business to provide an online service, product, or feature likely to be accessed by children to do certain things, including estimate the age of the child user with a reasonable level of certainty appropriate to the risk arising from the data management practices of the business, or apply privacy and data protection afforded to children to all consumers prohibited online services, products, and features from, among other things, using dark patterns to lead or encourage children to avoid personal information beyond what is reasonably expected to provide that online service, product, or feature, or to forego privacy protection. They're trying to put this onto an operating system. Again, this is the government trying to be the parents. If you give your child a computer, you can set up parental protection. You can set up restrictions on that computer, but what does the government need to verify my age when I'm installing an operating system? It doesn't. And it's already happening in 2 states. As he's pointing out that this is already passed in California. Yeah, it goes into effect. So it's already the law, but it goes into effect on January 1st. Colorado is the one that's currently trying to get it through the House, but that's now 2 states that this is going through.
For it, Democrats and Republicans alike, the whole kit and caboodle, everyone said, yeah, that's a good job. And Governor Gavin Newsom of California signed it into law on October 13th of this last year. So just
to protect the children, we're going to, a citizen that is willing to give up their freedom for security deserves neither and will receive neither. It's that simple. The more freedoms you give up to protect other people, it's the same with like COVID. Wear a mask to protect other people. Take the shot because of other people. Give up your freedoms.
Whatever that is, 3 some odd months ago. The law takes effect as of January 1st of 2027. So a little less. So what is that? 10 months from now, just shy or just a little hair over 10 months from now. All operating system vendors who wish to do business in the state of California are forced to implement age verification measures of varying types into their systems at the system level when a new user creates a user account. Now, this applies even when there's not user accounts on the system. I went through very carefully this really, really awful bill and tried to figure it out. Would this apply to, say, FreeDOS, right? FreeDOS is an open source free software re-implementation of DOS. There's no user accounts on that system. This applies to that. If FreeDOS fails to ask the user what their age is and fails to provide an API for other application developers to query that age, technically, as of January 1st, 10 months from now, FreeDOS will be in violation of California Assembly Bill number 1043. Let me just read a little tiny bit to you so you can see exactly what's happening here. This bill, beginning January 1st, 2027, would require, among other things, related to age verification with respect to software applications, an operating system provider as defined to provide an accessible interface at account setup that requires an account holder as defined to indicate the birth date, age, or both of the user of that device for the purpose of providing a signal regarding the user's age bracket to applications available in a covered application store, and to provide a developer as defined who has requested a signal with respect to a particular user with a digital, I hate the way they word these, it just drives me crazy, with a digital signal via a reasonably consistent real-time application programming interface regarding whether a user is in any of several age brackets as prescribed. The bill would require a developer to request a signal with respect to a particular user from an operating system provider or a covered application store when the application is downloaded and launched. And because the most ridiculous example, I think, is FreeDOS. FreeDOS has what would be called an application store. They have a simple application that lets people download open source DOS applications via a little interface. Because, yeah,
this is a pure example of out of control government. This is the government interfering in free market. This is government trying to collect more information about the citizens to control them. Because again, the government does not fear the population. There's a reason why there are certain countries that their capitals are behind walls. It's because they fear their population. They don't fear us. They don't fear the voter. because we have too many idiots that are voting that can't even tell you simple things about how our government works, but vote on vibes. Vote on feeling instead of what is actually happening. And it doesn't matter if it's left or right. Right, at least, is a little more logical on their voting, but there's still too much party politics. Vote for the person, not necessarily for the party, because you know what? I'm tired of people just being voted in because of their party affiliation. The wrong people are being voted in just because they happen to have an R or a D behind their name. But this also happens during the primary. The better pick is being left out in the cold for the incumbent. The incumbent is a piece of garbage and gets right back in and doesn't do shit. And then signs on to bills like this.
You can get network access on DOS. So therefore, it would need to comply with this. Acinide, NetBSD, Haiku, FreeBSD, Ubuntu, Fedora, Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, everything. Everything is going to have to comply with this in the state of California, and now Colorado is adding it in too. If you have this sort of...
The failed state of California. Yeah, I'm fine if we drop to 49 states. Let California just die. I mean, they're already killing off their population in the sense that they're making them run away from the state. The only problem is that some of these people that are running away from the state of California are bringing their fucking politics with them to these other states. So while California continues to go into the hole, it just keeps digging themselves deeper and deeper into a hole. The ones that voted for a lot of this garbage have fled and are now infecting other parts of the country. That's why I'm kind of big on, you want to know what? We do need some policy changes. States probably could implement this going, hey, you want to know what? For federal elections, we can't stop you from voting. It is your constitutional right. But when it comes to local, you must be a resident of the state for a minimum of 5 years before you can start voting on anything that affects the state. When it comes to school boards, to city councils, to mayors, to governors, to representatives.
Bill in place. It has the same identical, by the way, fines. Both 7,000, I believe it is 7,500. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's 7,500 fines, $500,000 if you, sorry, $7,500. There you go. I said it right that time. If you knowingly don't have that feature implemented, like it's a choice, right? Right. It's not like an error made it not work. If you decided to not implement the age verification signal, age bracket functionality, you can be fined for every instance in both the state of California.
Excuse me. I'm curious on how that's going to affect people that want to build a computer that's never going to go online. I got rid of Windows 11 because it's forcing me to be online. To set up anything like that. That's why I went to Linux, because the whole point is that I don't have to connect to a network. I don't have to do that. I can build a computer and have it a completely offline system. But based on a rule like this means that I would have to connect it to the internet because it's got to get the verification. As he was reading in the bill, it sounds like, well, this is the stepping stone to what? Scanning a driver's license? The party that's against fucking checking people before they vote is now wanting to do ID checks to be able to do a fucking operating system. What is fucking wrong with Democrats? Our government is out of fucking control. It doesn't matter at the state level or the federal government. Because the thing is where California goes, other states fucking follow, and then it just gets worse and worse. This is completely antithetical to smaller government. It's against it. And any Republican that would sign on to something like this needs to be removed from office, needs to be voted out and primaried. This is not smaller government. This is literally government interference in the private sector and interference in our ability to buy software to be able to use our computer that we own, that isn't the fucking government's responsibility. It isn't the fucking government's computer. It's not theirs. So I don't know how this even passes the muster when it comes to securing our own papers, when it comes to the digital aspect of things. It's not the government's job to do this. This is literally the government taking away freedom. Government in our country was instituted to protect freedom, not interfere like this. This is out of control. And this is why I get so fucking pissed off when it comes to like Democrats that have no problem passing shit like this. And then the stupid ass Republicans that will sign on to this because it's for the children. That's how they get the fucking foot in the door. And then they take more and more freedoms away from us. Every fucking time.
Yeah, in Colorado, once the Colorado one passes, this is devastating. I mean, there's several issues here. The first is, the concerns over simply having this sort of functionality into a system. Now, to be very, very frank about exactly how these bills are laid out, these bills are not as extreme when it comes to identity verification as many other bills are, right?
To start. Because all they're saying is just the age and the birth date of each user. But that's the stepping stone. That's the fucking foot in the door to start requiring additional things. Like the scanning of a fucking ID. Why do you have to scan a fucking ID to be able to use your computer, to be able to use an operating system on your computer that you own? Yeah, I'm fired up about this because this is out of control. This is not the job of the fucking government.
These bills specifically require the user to make a good faith declaration of how old they are. However, it also leaves a lot of mushy language and wiggle room for how the states might interpret that sort of verification. There's a lot of, to the best of your abilities and the developers will make a good faith extra effort to blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of those sorts of languages in there, which suggests that the ultimate goal is to do additional ID verification of users, right?
Exactly.
Now, but the problem goes much further than that, in my opinion, because this is the government telling software developers what features they must provide in their systems under penalty of such dramatic fines that they would go out of business. And it's done in such a way that that even the smallest of hobbyist developers, heck, if Terry Davis was alive, Temple OS would apply here. Terry Davis would then have to implement this functionality or be sued into utter oblivion. And that to me is terrifying. I do not like the concept of any government being able to declare, hey, operating system provider, hey, software developers, you must add this bit of functionality. This must be in the workflow of the user. This must be part of your user interface.
More out of control, big government bullshit. That's all this is. And on top of that, it's more interference in our personal lives. The left that's always like, keep your laws out of my vagina. Keep your laws out of our bedrooms, are the ones that are doing shit like this. How is this really almost no different? This is more interference in the government in our lives. No, we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of this country, and shit like this is going on. At this point, bring on a right-wing dictator as far as I'm concerned. Maybe we can get some freedoms back because we actually put the Democrats out of the way and they can't keep implementing bullshit like this.
You must provide an API for this functionality. And I just don't like that. I don't like that. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't like that. Now, I am all for things like good parental controls on an operating system. Great. Yes.
Parental controls. Exactly. If you're going to give your child access to this stuff, then set up the account. I can see the government not requiring, but requesting that software developers, when it comes to OSs, put more robust child safety stuff in there that's easy accessible and easy to set up for parents to do for their children. But to do this age verification stuff, this is the foot in the door for more and more surveillance in our personal computers.
Optional parental controls on an OS level are really, really handy. There's plenty of operating systems out there that provide this. Apple, Microsoft, many Linux systems provide the ability for a parent or a guardian to say, okay, I'm going to create an account that is a minor account. I'm going to limit what games they can install.
If you want to protect the children, here's a novel idea. Don't make it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to have a cell phone, to have a tablet. Not allowed to have these technologies that could put them at risk. They're minors, so take away the technology and make it illegal for them. And then if you find a child that is sitting there with a cell phone, then give them a ticket. Juvie Hall, as far as I'm concerned. Just minor in possession. I'm fine more with that type of thing than doing this shit for people that maybe don't have kids. Grandparents, that their computers are theirs and they don't have their grandchildren touching them. Again, where does the government think they have this ability? And I'm tired of it being, well, this is to protect the children. No, this is for you guys to put your fucking foot in the door.
I'm going to say that here's what applications they can install. In some cases, there's even, white or black lists for what websites they can go to. Great. Implement those as optional features in a system.
Yes.
Optionally, not mandated by the government, but the operating system provider themselves provide them as a feature to say, hey, this is a feature that our system provides. We developed it optionally for you to use optionally, right? Great. Love it. That's good for everybody. It's good for kids. It's good for parents. If we're really talking about protecting the children, which gets trotted out a lot, then that's a thing.
Protecting the children is a novel idea when it comes from the Democrats that are all about fucking killing their babies off before they're born. The Democrats that are pushing especially left-wing ideals that's happening in Canada with the MAID system, the fact that we have states in this country that are already authoring the euthanization of the sick. They really care about fucking life. They really want to protect the citizens. They want to protect us, but have no problem with offering for us to off ourselves. Have no problem with going, well, you want to know what? If you have this child that's going to screw up your entire life, would you like to abort it?
Fantastic way to actually protect the children. Provide optional, detailed, and strong parental controls on a system, completely optionally, right? Not mandated by the government, not forced to be turned on by default, none of that garbage. Just provide it optionally so when a parent sets up a computer or a phone or a tablet or a gaming console for their kids, they can turn on those systems, turn on those parental controls for a kid. That is a fantastic thing to do, and I love the systems that do it. I've got 3 kids. And my kids have video games. My kids play with all sorts of stuff. And my oldest kid is now of the age where she has access to, computers and smartphones and whatnot for the first time. My younger kids still don't. I make them grow up like they're in the 80s. They grow up like I did, right? So they're all offline until they get much older, and it becomes more of a requirement for schooling and that sort of thing. So my oldest kid, who really needs the access to those sorts of things,
and that's where I'm actually, I think, the needing of the internet when it comes to classwork and stuff like that needs to be taken out when it comes to the educational system. Go back to physical media when it comes to textbooks and handwritten papers and stuff like that. And fine, you can type up a report, but you have to turn it in a physical form. we keep doing all this stuff of talking about it. It's like, no, the younger generations coming up and school age children should be learning in analog first. Then when they get older, they can move into the digital. They can start taking classes and stuff like that for technology. Again, it goes back to the whole point of developmental years. They're losing and becoming dumber. The amount of students coming out of schools right now that can't even fucking read. They can't write. These are the same schools that are allowing their students to go out without informing parents that they're taking them out to ICE protests. I'm a big advocate for blowing up and ending, watch my language on that one, for ending the Department of Education and returning it to local control. I think the Department of Education was a bad idea. What is it supposed to yield? And if you look at the description, I've talked about it before on either Nerds Covering the News or Iron's show. We went at and looked at the actual responsibility of the Department of Education, and everything the Department of Education is supposed to be mandated to do, they're not even doing. In fact, what they are doing is not in their description or mandate. Two things need to occur when it comes to education. Actually, three. The removal of technology and the requirement of that technology to be able to learn. The ending of teacher unions. And the end of the Department of Education.
I still have some amount of parental controls going on, and those are all optional and well defined in the systems, and I turn them on when I feel that I need them for my kids. It works fantastically well. But none of those cases, like Nintendo's Switch's parental controls or the various parental controls on Android and whatnot, none of those are required by law. Those were all implemented by the developers who thought, you know what, this is the kind of features that they thought parents would probably need. And some of the features are well designed, some of them are not. You know how it goes. But they were implemented as they felt were best. Now, forget all that. The government is mandating exactly what has to be developed, how parental controls are going to work. It's going to apply to everybody. Everyone is going to have to declare their age and birth date and all this other stuff in the systems, whether they want it or not. I don't need my computer to know when my birthday is. In fact, I don't want my computer to know what my birthday is. Do I think there's anything necessarily bad that my computer is going to do because it knows when my birthday is? Well, probably not. But I still don't want it to know because I've been in software engineering for long enough to not trust it. I don't trust adding additional data of mine into the system if it's not absolutely necessary. And this is not absolutely necessary. I find this truly, truly frustrating. So I looked through the bill. It's not great. It's really, really not great. And it's going to be mandatory as of January 1st. So there's no there's no wondering, well, is it going to pass or not in Colorado? Well, if it doesn't, it's still law in California. That ship's already sailed, and it's a pretty horrific thing. So we'll keep tabs on exactly how this goes and whether or not operating system developers are actually going to comply with this, which ones will. And if the state of California actually starts to impose penalties for those that don't come next January, we're going to find out. Thank you to all of the subscribers to the Lunduke Journal for making it possible to do this sort of coverage. Go to lunduke.com and become a subscriber. It's fantastic. Monthly, yearly, and lifetime subscriptions are available. Lifetime subscribers can optionally be added to the Wall of Shame / awesomeness. There's in fact 4 walls currently. This one, and this one. Those are really good names for them. And there's a 5th wall that I need to get put up here. I did not finish it in time for today's show, but it will be up here within the next day or two. I'm a couple of days behind on wall number 5 and adding a few extra people to those walls.
So like I said, in the description is a link to his channel and a link to this video if you want to watch it uninterrupted and find out what's going on. But again, this is out of control government. It really is. It is out of control government. This is more government control. This is not the idea that our founding fathers had of small government. This is just continuing to grow government, more governmental interference in our lives, in things that are not even necessary for the government to be involved in. And again, all being pushed by the party that wants them to stay out of their vagina, that wants them to stay out of the bedroom. But you're okay with forcing it into everyone's computer. How is this not a violation of the Fourth Amendment and the securing of our papers, which in modern terms does mean our digital information as well? But with that said, I got fired up on that one because this one specifically really irritates the hell out of me. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Coming up on Saturday at 7 p.m. PST is insert title here. Then back on this channel on Tuesday at 6 p.m. PST for Nerds Covering the News. And then back here next Thursday for the next episode of All the Good Titles Were Taken. I am your host, Drunken Emerald Arrow. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, follow button, depending on where you're watching from and what platform. We will see you next time. Have a great weekend. You can catch me in a little bit over on Iron Oxide's channel for Ironcast. Rumble, I'm going to push you off to and raid you over to Iron Show, though he hasn't started quite yet, but he will be shortly. And I will start the raid on that one. So everyone have a great night. Thank you, Mr. Beak. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great night. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next